guys, welcome back to another episode of the Whisky Diaries. My name is Martin Lang. We're here at the live from the Glendronach Distillery in the Highlands. It's part of our Scotland tour for the Whisky Distilleries. As always, absolutely stunning distillery. This is part of a really heritage, like you can see, really old buildings. Not much has changed for the last 200 years. We did one of the tours today that is called the Old and Rare. You will know why it's called Old and Rare by the time we go to the tasting of the whiskies. The person who did the distillery tour, her name was Lynn. She's been working here for a year, but she comes from basically a long line of distillery workers. Even her granddad used to work as in a distillery, so she knows her stuff, and it was actually really engaging tour. They have a very strict policy about pictures and photographs and filming, but we got away with taking a couple of shots here and there. But it's not going to be as thorough as other distillery tours because of those regulations. Now, a little bit of history, as we said in previous videos about these distillery tours. I'm not going to go too much into the history of the distillery in itself because we have talked about this in previous videos and reviews that we've done in location at Death and Taxes. But just a few key points and notes about the distillery itself. It started in 1826 by James Allardyce. This used to be a working mill, but apparently the competitor down the road was a way bigger mill. So eventually, when James' dad passed away, he inherited the mill and he decided to transform it into a distillery. He found a couple of business partners. One of them actually worked as a supplier of yeast for the rest of the distilleries, and the other two were farmers. So he got the grain and he got the yeast basically sorted, which is 2 out of 1 ingredients for making whiskey. Now, the distillery itself is standing on over a little stream called the Dronac Dram. That is where they get the water for the distillation, for cooling down the distillers. Back in the day, that dram used to be used for actually creating the spirit. But nowadays, they switched to about 4 different streams of underground water that is a very soft and high acidic water, similar to what you would get at Glenfarclas, for instance. So it goes through limestone, through hard rock. So it's just basically, it doesn't have any minerals, and it's great for this, for fermentation and for distilling. Now, basically, after it got bought in the 1920s, Captain Charles Grant, the son of William Grant, actually bought the distillery and steered away from the William Grant's family and opened the distillery itself. In the 1960s, it got bought by the Teachers brothers, and in the back of this lovely courtyard, you can actually see the different owners over the time. And basically in 1967, I can see it right now, the Teachers brothers basically took over the distillery, and then in the early 2000s, Billy Walker, owner of BenRiach at the time, bought this one, and Glenglassaugh, and then later on Brown-Forman in 2016 took over it, and it basically is still the owner till today. The reason why I mention that is because we are going to be tasting a lot of different whiskies today, and Billy Walker has had a lot to do with those. Now, more into the actually technical side of things, so what the distillery does and how the spirit is made. They have a mill on site that they actually use. Back in until the early 60s, the 15 to 20% of the malting was done on site. Now, obviously, it's not feasible to do that, so they actually buy the malt from the West Coast, from a couple of big malting companies, which is what a lot of distilleries in Scotland do, because it's too expensive to grow it yourself. Now, the name itself, before we go into more of that, I forgot to mention that Dronac actually means bramble in Gaelic. So Glendronach means the valley of brambles. There's a lot of wild berries growing around the fields here, and that it comes from the Dronac. They grow around the Dronac itself. So back to the production of the spirits. after the milling is done, that is behind us. Interesting fact about it, they have one of the mills wait a second, the mill is called a Robert Bobby Mill. Bobby mills are very popular around Scotland, and there's a few distilleries that use it, but the funny story about it is they made such a good mill that they never broke. So eventually the company went broke because nobody would buy anymore. So they last forever. So they bought it in 1920s, and since then they've been using it. Basically, once what the grains that they're getting is a mix between Laureate and Sassy grain. They mill it and then they take it to the mash tun. The mash tun is, the fermentation tanks are actually made out of, they used to be made out of pine wood, but nowadays they're made out of Scottish, and I have to read this because I can't remember what it's called. Scottish larchwood, and it's sourced from the side. They have 9 washbacks and 1 massive mash tun, which is basically made out of cast iron and has a massive copper dome on top. Once that gets transferred into the mash tun, they have 9 of them. The grist is actually made out of 10% of flour, 20% of husks, and 70% of the grist. Basically, as I said, all gets transferred to the mash tun, then gets transferred to the fermentation tanks. All of the rest is basically very standard for distilleries. The fermentation goes up to 8% for 60 hours. She said that it's anything between 50 to 60 hours depending on the weather and depending on the temperature. After that, basically gets put into 4 pot stills. So they're actually quite small. The still room is actually quite small. They have two low wine stills, so basically the wash stills that are 9,900 litres, and then they have the 2 spirit stills are 5,000 litres. The wash still actually has like a little, it's hard to explain, it has a little S shape on the top. The line arm basically goes like this, so it gets a lot of reflux and a lot of all the heavy wines, heavy spirit comes down, and then all the more lighter spirits gets through. So it kind of have a lot of reflux going on the stills. The spirit comes at 73% ABV. And after that is basically just age. They have all the warehouses far away, so all the stills, when the final spirits come through, goes through basically stainless steel pipes all the way to the warehouses for the people just to basically barrel it. Now in 2021, this distillery became almost fully automated. At the moment, they have 2 people working on site on the weekday and 1 person actually during the weekend. The spirit stills, the arm is on a 90 degrees straight. So we've seen Cardew, for instance, that they do it on an angle, upwards angle, and then we see Balvenie and Glenfiddich that is on a downward angle. These guys is just basically straight up. The new make, we got to taste the new make spirits, and absolutely stunning. They have it's a really, really poached apples, really, really fresh, really nice spirit, and it comes at 68.3 ABV. Now the warehouses, they have 3 warehouses with a total of 56,000 barrels aging at any given time. All the whiskey barrel that they got on site is from 1968. Now in the early 2000 before 2010, when Billy Walker was the owner, they were experimenting with a lot of barrels, and we're going to go through that in a little bit. But the main majority of barrels that they use nowadays is PX puncheons and butts, and Oloroso sherry puncheons and butts as well. So anything between 500 to 600 litres barrels, and that's what they're going to stick to for the foreseeable future. What they're trying to do is just keep the identity of what James Allardyce used to do back in the day, and that's how GlenDronach started. So basically sherry bombs, which I am 100% happy with it because they're absolutely delicious. Now the whiskey tasting was incredible. We got really looked after. The Older and Rare tour, I'm not sure how much actually cost, but basically we went through 4 whiskies and they're all over 25 years old, 24 years old. We started with the GlenDronach 1993, that it was 28 years old. Then we did the GlenDronach 1992, which it was 27 years old. GlenDronach 1989, so that it was 29 years old, and we finished with the GlenDronach 24. The one that is worth mentioning, it was the 29-year-old GlenDronach from 1989, from 2019. That was 49% ABV, and it was absolutely delicious. I cannot recommend that one enough if you can get it. And then what we're going to be trying today is the GlenDronach 1993, because this one is the one that you can hand bottle in the distillery. In the distillery, you can actually do it yourself, unlike other distilleries as well, in which you get you get a pre-measured cask, and then, like we've done in previous videos, this one is 100%. You open the lever and then you have to close it yourself, otherwise it keeps pouring. So it's actually a pretty cool experience, and the barrel obviously changes all the time. We actually got almost the last couple of bottles left. It's a great experience. We'll go into the review of this one in a second, but one of the things that I want to mention is in 2010, when Billy Walker took over the distillery, he likes to experiment. He used to be the owner of BenRiach as well, and he loves experimenting with casks. So in 2010, they released a whole range of bottles from GlenDronach. That it was the first time in 180 years that GlenDronach was finished in different casks than your standard sherry, your standard Oloroso casks. So we tried the Sauterne finish, the Muscatel finish, the Madeira cask, and then a 16-year-old Platinum that it was only released for the South Africa market. So it was actually really, really interesting to see what different casks does to this new make. And I can tell you the favorites was the Sauterne finish and the Madeira cask. The Muscatel and the Marsala cask they were not that great. But the one that it was really, really awesome was the Madeira cask that was 19 years old, because it came in a really, really light color, but you can really taste the new make on that one, plus the sweetness of the Madeira casks. It was an excellent experience. The bottle shops itself, or the little gift shop that you got there, they have insane amounts of whiskies. You can try anything from 1989, 1992, all the single casks. You can try a rare 33-year-old release, all the Marsala, all the different ranges from 2010. You can try all the bottlings. They have an incredible. And when we were there, the interesting part about this one is that there's a lot of people that were coming just for the tasting. They weren't coming for the distillery stealth. And what Lynn was saying before as well is people from around the area, from Dafton and stuff, they come directly to the distillery just to find out when they're going to release a new one of these and when the new cask is going to come along, because they come directly to the distillery just to get one of these one. And this is insanely good. We tried it at the tasting, as I said, and we definitely decided to buy a bottle of it. It's not cheap. It came out to £550, but as we said, we are on a special tour, so we decided to splurge a little bit. So again, this is straight from the cask, 48.3%, 29. Well, Lynn says that this, technically speaking, is actually 28 years old, but I like 29 better. But yes, so we're just gonna open it as soon as we just. There we go. Excellent. The color of this is insane. It's like pitch black. You can barely see through the bottle. So it really, really shows. And it pours like trickle. It's like thick. I'm going to put this one just in case there. Really thick and syrupy, especially at 48% ABV. You're expecting a little bit more lighter liquid, but it's actually really, really syrupy. The smell is insane. You get all those caramel, spicy notes, cinnamon, cloves, dark fruits, and then, oh wow, that's smooth. At 48, again, I just taste this in the tasting room, and every time you taste it, you go like, holy moly, there's so many flavors coming through. it's a proper sherry bomb, but at the same time, it's not so much that the tannins is chewing through your back of your back. You still get a smoothness and complexity, and again, a really well balanced palate. You can still, once you sip it and you swallow it, you can still get more flavors coming through. Again, dry apricots, like black fruits, forest fruits, dark chocolate, like, I don't know, it's a range of flavors that is incredible. Really worth it, especially if you want to bring it back or just take it for a friend, or as a really special gift, or for you to drink on special occasions. And each time, Lynn promised that every time they change the cask, is actually going to be just as good or better, because it's just what they're known for. The good things as well is they're planning to expand. They're doing 3 new warehouses in the next couple of years. They're planning to do a new still house. So GlenDronach is really expanding, and the plan is to stick to their core, basically being really good at making sherry bombs with sherry butts and Oloroso and PX. So I expect to see much more of this, and and in the same standards and the same quality. Anyway, guys, I'm gonna keep drinking this one here. This is a beautiful distillery, really old world, yeah, hopefully you enjoy this video. Please let us know if you have any recommendations or anything that you really want to hear about, or any specific information that you want from any of the distilleries. We'll try our best to accommodate, and we'll see you next time. Slàinte mhath.